We would like to acknowledge that the episodes in this series are produced on the traditional unceded lands of the Coast Salish peoples, which includes the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We thank them for allowing us to be their guests.
So there's a lot of metal in the ocean, a lot of unexploited metal in the ocean, particularly in deeper places, and it comes in several forms. The most talked about is nodules. They're like these potato-sized rocks that just kind of litter the ocean floor, or slightly, under some silt, buried under the silt there, and they contain relatively high concentrations of metal compared to what you find on land. And they're attractive because some of the metals that we're projecting we're going to need for clean energy exist in those deposits on the ocean floor. And there's also these deep sea vents that are almost like underground or undersea volcanoes that will that bring up metals that eventually they solidify, and you can basically crack them and take away the pieces, and they're very metal rich. And there's also seamounts, which are deep sea mountains that just the flanks of these mountains, metals build up, and they can be mined. You can take parts of these mountains and remove them. And the nodule, the mining for nodules is probably is something that is starting to happen. There's been test mining for that. And there's one very advanced private company that's kind of ahead of the pack, that's planning to mine these nodules from the deep sea between Mexico and Hawaii. There's a almost 2 million mile sort of area that's been identified as being especially rich in these nodules. So that's, if it happens, that's where it'll happen first. And so you have this private Vancouver company, so it's a public Vancouver company that has been sponsored by a tiny Pacific Island state called Nauru. And so they're hoping that's going to be the first place to happen. There are multiple moratoriums proposed, and so it's a good question about when it'll happen, and it's looking quite possible that it will happen. Now the question is whether it'll be scaled up, on a industrial level, or whether this is, whether it maybe the machines won't work. I don't know. I don't think, this is a lot of speculative stuff here. But we're looking at late 2025. It could potentially be as soon as that.
That's going to be fairly destructive, right?
It's a dredging operation.
Yeah.
But it's in some cases 2 miles deep in the ocean under absolutely crushing pressure with salt water. And these machines are kind of more like spaceships than they are like vehicles that we recognize. They look kind of like something from a horror movie or Jules Verne or something. And so the concerns that have been raised about it, no one knows what the impacts will be, which is part of a huge problem right there. But there's concerns that not only is the seafloor disturbed, but in the process of bringing these things up and separating the valuable stuff from the mud and the silt and everything, there's concerns that we'll just create these curtains of sediment in the ocean. And if this is scaled up, those could be significant. And they could travel around. And again, we don't know for sure. One of the concerns I have is that we might end up doing deep sea mining if we can't find other ways to get the metals we need. And as well, if we can't define what the clean energy transition is in time. Because if it's just to replace everything we have in this fossil fuel world with the clean energy version, then we're going to have to go to some risky places to do it.